Okay.
Well, take a look at what Jim's about down on here.
Oh boy,
look at this, man.
Hydration.
Is that vodka or is that gin? I can't tell.
It's gin.
Yeah, there you go. That's good. That gets you loosened up.
Yeah, that's right. It gets me uninhibited, you know.
Exactly. Looks like you need that, Jim.
Yeah.
You need to loosen up a little bit.
That's right.
Hello, folks, and welcome to the show. It is Tuesday, June 26th, and you're listening to the StreetPX podcast. My name is Casper.
And as always, Jim Watkins. How you doing, Casper?
I am doing great, and I feel a little bad because it's been, about a month now since our last episode. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, it does sound about right, but hey, that's the way it goes sometimes, you know?
Things got a little away from us or out of hand there after, during and after Streetfoto. So I know I started losing track of time, and I'm finally starting to catch back up. How about you?
Yeah, same thing with me. You know, with this new stuff coming on at work, and you know, a lot of photography, everything but street, unfortunately. But hey, I'm gonna get back out there. But it's been really busy.
Yeah. It sounds like you're talking about those paying gigs.
Oh yeah, the stuff that I actually make money off of. You know, you can't
get them when you
can't eat off the street. You know, that means that has double meaning.
Yeah, you're right. You could eat off the street, but it's highly not recommended.
No, not really.
But speaking of Streetfoto, what a hell of a time that was.
Oh man, it was fantastic. People from all over the world, you know, old friends, new friends. Oh my God.
Yep. I would say probably the best one yet is the third annual, and it just seems to get better every single year.
It sure does. And we had a little exhibition going on, huh?
Yes, the opening of our wonderful Lucid collective.
Yeah.
And what a show. All I know is I couldn't move for one down in that space where the exhibit was. I remember not being able to move very smoothly through that crowd, and it was hot.
Yeah, it was hot, and it was loud too.
It was
loud. It was loud. But everybody, I mean, the photos looked great. We had a great exhibition. Mm-hmm. A lot of people came to checked it out, and they liked it. So hey, that was very gratifying.
Yeah, and a big thank you to everybody, both here in San Francisco as well as those that traveled from outside the Bay Area that came to visit us that night. That warmed my heart. I am so utterly appreciative of all of you that got a chance to do that, and it is still going to be up there for another 5 more days, or 6 more. No, math. 4 more days.
That's right. We got to give that shout out to Glass Key for hosting that event and the exhibition. That was great of them. I mean,
that was
really
pretty wonderful. And actually, speaking of that, it would be a good time to do a quick little plug for our wonderful sponsor.
Why not?
Yes.
Nice segue.
Isn't it? Yes. Well done. Thank you for that. Glass Key Photo. This is San Francisco's premier location for all things film. Located at 1230 Sutter Street in downtown San Francisco. If you're looking for 35 millimeter film, medium format, you're looking for a new camera or repairs to your old, or if you just want a really awesome zine from a photographer right here in the Bay Area, this is a place to go. And in the next 4 days, it's also the place to go and check out our wonderful show.
Yeah, just stop in and see Matt and Gordon, and they'll show you where it is.
Yep, it is that hidden little kind of dungeon downstairs.
Yeah, that's right.
Which works perfect.
Yeah, it really does, because that's where our work belongs. I'm just kidding. I mean, there's some.
That's fucked up.
There's some great. I know it is, but hey, but I mean, there's some great. I mean, C.J. Lucero and oh my God, of course, you,
you, Mike Kirshner,
Mike Kirshner, Mike Manzano,
Dwayne
Newton. Oh my man.
Yeah, we scored some pretty damn good talent for the old Lucid Collective, didn't we?
Oh yeah, we sure did.
Mm-hmm. We sure did. And this is kind of the beginning of much more to come. So
stay tuned, folks.
That's just the first exhibit. We got some zines. We're starting to cook a potential book in the near future. I don't know. We haven't talked about it, but I figured I'd just plant that seed right now.
There you go. There you go.
But actually, moving on from that, I do want to make note of something, and we did not take this decision lightly. But after 3 years of running with StreetPX and doing a pretty damn reliable job, every 2 weeks, it's time for us to take a little break, and we figured we're going to use this opportunity to realign our release schedule to be more in accordance with seasons. I know we were talking about that before the episode here, and we thought that'd be a really cool idea. And it'd give us the opportunity to be able to reach out to a lot more photographers and do a little bit more behind the scenes work. That way we can provide a much better, a much more enjoyable show on the back end.
That's right. And maybe get a lot of this other stuff that we have to do, get that out of the way.
You mean those things called work?
Yeah, that well, we get that out of the way so we can spend more time with the show and
yes,
keep delivering that great content,
Yep, and then maybe hopefully use this time to be able to get our ducks in a row to do maybe some more live shows or panel discussions at some of the local venues.
Yeah.
Once our season kind of gets up and going, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna just take the rest of the summer off and return right back here in the fall. I think that's what we were saying, right? Fall.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah.
So it's a good round word. Sort of. There's a round letter in there. One.
There you go.
But yeah, we're gonna be taking a couple of months off and then returning back here in the fall with so much more content. And that's not to say that we might not drop a little micro episode here and there. That's still always a possibility.
Yeah, that's right.
Keep an eye on the website. We're probably going to use this time to also ramp up some of our current news and blog posts and keep on pushing to our Flipboard magazine as well. So.
All right, there you go.
Yeah, so look for that. But we still got an episode though. We still got this great show with Marc Silber.
There you go, man.
Yeah, we recorded this one here recently. Marc Silber is a photographer out of Carmel, California, author, very accomplished author, teacher, interviewer. I mean, this is definitely going to be a great episode. And I do want to put it out there. He just recently released his newest book, Secrets to Creating Amazing Photos. It's 83 compositional tools from the masters. And as we had actually predicted in this episode, as you will hear, it did make the bestsellers on Amazon there. It was one of the top-selling photography books just about immediately on its release.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is a follow-up to his previous book, Advancing Your Photography Secrets to Amazing Photos from the Masters, and both of these books can be found on Amazon, so definitely go and take a look out there. We're going to have links in the show notes on StreetPX.com, where you can find all of our previous episodes, our hundreds of hours of content, and the potential new micro episodes and news blog posts that we'll be posting during this hiatus.
There you go.
So, enough banter. I think it's time to get into this show with the one and only Marc Silber.
Take it away.
Above all, I definitely want to say a big thank you, Marc, for joining us here in the studio and jumping on the mic with us here at StreetPX.
Hey, I love talking about photography. No problem.
Yeah, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks, Jim.
Yes, and from the looks of it, looks like you're a Bay Area born and raised, right?
Yeah, I'm one of the few. There's not that many. I think there's about a handful, actually.
Yeah,
from the Bay Area.
Yeah, we're all transplants. It seems like
I never meet people from here. They're from everywhere else, and every now and then you run into another native like myself. I'm actually second generation, even from my mom's side, which is really unusual.
You're what? I'm sorry. Say that again.
But second generation Californian.
Really?
On my mom's side, yeah.
Okay.
Because, the Bay Area is just, it's always been this place where people are drawn to for this, whatever we've got here, the creativity in our water, going back to the gold rush and the bohemian days with guys like, Jack London running around. And it's why I live here. It's why you guys live here too, I bet.
Oh yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. I mean, me and Jim, we're Chicagoans. Well, Jim more so than me. I was a transplant in Chicago as well. But eventually, that cold weather and hot weather, because it's extremes on both sides, just ran me out of the city.
Hey, my wife's from Chicago, but she's a
Oh, is she?
She's a full-fledged Californian now.
Oh, right. All right. What part of Chicago was she in?
Evanston.
Yeah. Northwestern University. Yeah. Wildcats.
Yeah.
Now, kind of coming back there, you spent a lot of time in Carmel, which is photographically beautiful. So I can definitely see what brought the visual interest around.
It's been an inspiration for me. This is where I started writing my books, and of course, I take a lot of photographs here too. And I'm a little more than half a mile from where Ansel Adams took a lot of his key photographs in Edward Weston. In fact, I can look out the window and see Point Lobos, which is where Edward Weston did a lot of his photography. His nudes in the sand dune, that sort of thing. All those were just right around the corner from here.
Nice.
Wow. That might be a good time to just real quick to talk about your influences. Now, I've noticed your photographic influences are outstanding. You can't get any better than that.
Yeah, I grew up as a black and white photographer. Learned darkroom skills when I was 12 years old. Mm-hmm. And my mom actually introduced me to Ansel Adams. So, of course, he was a huge influence.
Oh, yeah.
I read his books. Yeah, my mom was at Manzanar, which was the Japanese relocation center. And, she really felt bad about what we were doing back then. So she became a social worker there. And Ansel Adams came through and photographed. This is during World War II. So in 1964, I shouldn't use dates like that because that really dates me. But at my grade school, Ansel did an exhibit there, and I'll never forget my mom introducing me to Ansel Adams. Wow. It was such a thrill.
Yeah.
So he was obviously a huge influence, and I read all of his books, which are quite technical. You really have to sit down, you have to have a good dictionary, and you really have to, concentrate. So he was certainly a major influence. The other one, which is kind of the opposite extreme, is Henry Cartier-Bresson. Mm-hmm. So here you have Ansel on one hand, with big view cameras and tripods and, a very methodical approach to a photograph. And you have Cartier-Bresson, who's all about capturing the decisive moment with his Leica M2 or M3. He kind of used them both. But oddly enough, there's this interplay between them. Ansel used examples of Cartier-Bresson in one of his books. And because, the key thing that Ansel talked about, which is something I have actual footage of him discussing this, is the whole concept of visualization, which means you get the image in your mind before you press the shutter. And, we talk about street photography, that's not always, it doesn't seem possible, right? How do you do that when you're capturing these things that are just going by? But, there's still an element of that. You still had to put yourself in a certain location, and you can anticipate where the action is going to end up. And at what point do you press the shutter, which is really what Cartier-Bresson did. So those two photographers had a huge influence. Edward Weston I also love because he just was able to take everyday objects and find the beauty in them. A pepper.
Yeah.
Yes.
A toilet. If you've seen that photograph in Mexico, he made a toilet look beautiful. It's like, how do you do that? But he found that everyday beauty. He did not use enlargers. He only did contact prints. So he really did very little.
Oh, the post-processing.
He did a little bit of darkroom work.
And that's where definitely Ansel was more leaned. I still firmly believe that if Ansel got his hand on a iteration of Photoshop, he'd be in heaven.
Oh, he would know more things about Photoshop than anyone, and he would know more. He'd he'd have Adobe coming to him to find out what he knew, because that's the way he was.
Yep. I would love to see what he'd be capable of with the abilities that Photoshop affords.
Oh, absolutely. He would know it inside and out. But those are two of my influences as photographers.
Now, I saw another one that you had mentioned before, Minor White.
Minor White, absolutely.
Yeah.
Minor studied with Ansel, or he worked with Ansel,
mm-hmm.
and they actually started the San Francisco Art Institute's photography department together.
Mm-hmm.
And brought, because the Art Institute was basically fine art, painting and drawing and sculpture and that sort of thing. You look back in those days, it was only in, I think, the 20s and 30s that really photography really started to emerge as a fine art category. Before that, it was really regarded as a representational or a recording, almost like engraving.
Yeah.
Yes.
Rather than an actual art form. And so Ansel was one of the key people that actually brought it to the point of being a fine art. And so he naturally wanted to pass on his knowledge. And that was one of the ways he did it, was at the San Francisco Art Institute that I attended, by the way.
That's right.
I noticed that, yes. Very
a nice
prestigious.
segue into that, yeah.
Yeah. Along with another photographer that we've all heard of, Annie Leibovitz.
Yes.
Yeah, we were talking about that before the show. It's what a classmate to have.
She was. And, she was there at the right place at the right time, because she became one of the first Rolling Stone photographers.
Mm-hmm.
Not in both senses, interestingly enough. So for the magazine itself, and then she went on tour with the Stones and photographed them extensively. So I think that's where she really, took off as a photographer, and her name became very broadly known because of all her photographs in the magazine.
Did you have any collaborations with her when you were there?
No, but I did meet up with her in 2008. She had an exhibit in San Francisco. And, it was interesting because there was a lot of press there. And as soon as we saw each other, it was like, wow, old home week, right? So we talked quite a bit. And she gave me some really good advice. At the end of the show, I had a video team there. That was my first shoot, believe it or not, for my show, Advancing Your Photography.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, the very, very first shoot was 2008 at her exhibit. And after the camera teams left and her people left, we walked through her exhibit together. And she said, one of the key things is you have to have somebody edit your photographs other than yourself. And she wasn't necessarily talking about it from a Photoshop editing standpoint. It was more like if you're putting a collection together, get somebody else's eyeballs on those photographs. And shortly after that, I did an exhibit in a gallery in San Rafael. And Stephen Kirkaby runs that gallery. He came and looked at a collection that I had of photographs I took on a trip to Mexico when I was a senior in high school, believe it or not. I managed to talk my principal into letting me go rather than attend that last semester in high school.
Oh.
He signed off on letting me go to Mexico to work on a really remote project above Mazatlan. 2 days. Yeah, it was a day by Jeep and 2 days by foot. That's how far removed it was. And I took my Rolleiflex with me with lots of rolls of film and came back with just a tremendous collection of photographs. And anyway, for this exhibit, Stefan came and looked at my contact sheets, and he picked images out of there that I'd passed over. It's amazing. Ah. And some of them were, once I'd printed them, I thought, wow, how did I miss this one? This is great.
Mm-hmm.
So that advice from Annie is really good. Have somebody help you edit your photographs that can, maybe they'll see it a different way than you're seeing it. You might have missed something and they see. So it's a really good point.
It is extremely important. And it's funny you bring that up. Jim, myself, and a handful of other photographers recently actually convinced one another to begin meeting regularly and discussing our work and trying to adapt that same mentality into our work. And we had a meeting here recently, at least in regards to recording this show, where we all sat down and one of our members has been very obsessive on sequencing and series and learning about that, Mike Manzano, and working with another fellow photographer, Ben Molina, in the area. And we all just kind of came with just this smorgasbord of hand done prints, like 4x6. You get them at Walgreens or whatever. And we sat it down, and he's sitting there, and the first thing he does is grab the pile, and he starts just kind of putting them into separate piles. And I'm sitting there looking at him like, what are you doing?
What are you dealing these cards out for? Yeah,
exactly. It's like we're about to play spades, And but as he continued doing it, like, it was very interesting because it was obviously in the moment and very quick. But he was looking at similar traits or similar, topics, elements, what have you, in the image and matching them together and creating something that went so far beyond the image, the individual image. And one of the most interesting parts of it is the fact that you can take an image that was otherwise not exactly powerful on its own and breathe an entirely new life into that.
That's true.
Yeah. And so I started going back through my old work just off of what he told me and showed me. Started going back through old work and stuff that I wouldn't have shared before, and now finds a home amongst a handful of other ones of the same ilk. And now that as a body or a sequence of work becomes so much more powerful together than they would be separate.
That is so true. Yeah, absolutely. Because it forms, that image forms part of a story. And when you rearrange the components, you can change the story itself.
Well, actually, with that statement, I have a question just kind of to that point. Now, one of the topics that came up that it relates to that concept of creating a story, at least with an image. Now, documentary photography or reportage photography is very specific to that story or what's going on in that situation. Street, on the other hand, this is where we were talking about that there is some contention with that. Some see it as, rather than actually telling a story, but more enabling the viewer to be able to derive a story. And also kind of we started discussing the difference between what makes a story and what makes just a captured moment. What would you say to that?
Well, I think going back to Cartier-Bresson, what he did was he just had this amazing way of finding those stories in those images. And I do believe that a really good photograph, whether it's landscape or street or portraiture, should have that element of telling your viewer the story. It's this whole concept of, I'm going to go out and I'm finding this moment and I want to show you, I want to pass along to you, the viewer, what I saw and what I felt, even ideally. We want to get that emotion in there. So, I think one of the most important and powerful elements of a great photograph is that it tells a story to the viewer, not just what you saw, but also what you felt. And that is, you can have that be a standalone image, or in the case of documentary photography, let's say, you have a series, you have a sequence. So I really think it can be both. You can have that individual view that tells you something, or you can link it to other photographs, as we were talking about.
Yeah. Kind of going back to just to pivot back here to your education and your mentors, I was curious as far as when you were in school, did you have a specialty? Like, was there any particular type of photography you were wanting to do?
Well, it was kind of cool how I started out, because here I was, seventh grade. As soon as I learned how to use the darkroom, that was the magic moment. And before that, I was just taking snapshots. As soon as I learned how to go into the darkroom, all of a sudden it became really street photography with my classmates as the subject. And I look at my photographs from that time period, they're really pretty good because I was just, I was really interested in them and what they were doing. And that was really the direction I went in. I took some landscapes, but they weren't very good. The much more interesting ones were going around taking shots of my classmates. Like yesterday, I went to a reunion at my grade school, and they had a yearbook out from my 8th grade, and all the photographs in it were mine.
Is that right?
Yeah. Now, our yearbooks, I got to say, I went to this school in Menlo Park called Peninsula School. It's a very progressive, creative school.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
So our yearbooks didn't look like anybody else's yearbooks. There were no pictures, like little pictures of people in it. It was all just creative writing, drawings, and photographs. Huh. And the front cover image is the one that actually I've sold more of this photograph than any others. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's a silhouette of kids jumping off.
Yes.
The decisive. Yes. It's the one that you use as the decisive moment explanation.
Exactly. Yeah. Good one. Yeah. So that was on the cover. And then inside there was another photograph. I looked at it yesterday and I thought, I need to dig this image out. It's one of my classmates in a water fight, and I used a long exposure so you can see the water kind of streaking across. Mm-hmm. But she's fairly sharp, so it was probably like at maybe a 50th of a second, so that she's fairly still, but the water is kind of spraying across the image. And it's pretty good. I looked at it and went, hey, that.
Oh, I agree. Yes. That one just jumped out of the page at me.
Yeah. It jumped out. So anyway, that's how I started. I started as a Cartier-Bresson, I guess, won out in terms of my direction. And I was a kid just carrying my camera around with me all the time.
And it sounds like you had a lot of support around you as far as helping. You didn't have the kind of parents that were like, no creative, find a cubicle.
Oh, no. My parents, they went in the completely different direction, which is, taking I think a big risk in a way, because it's a harder path to follow than the guy in the cubicle. Let's face it.
True.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
When you set out on these creative journeys, where is it going to end up? If you write a book, what's going to happen? If you make a film, what's going to happen? It's just not it's not a cut and dried thing. But they definitely encouraged me, and I was pretty out on the loose. Just to give you an example, my older sister had an apartment on the edge of the Haight-Ashbury. I was 15 years old. She went to Mexico for a month and left me the keys to the apartment.
Whoa!
And my parents didn't say no. So I was living there when I was 15 years old in the edge of the Haight-Ashbury. Now, listen to this cool way to learn photography. So the San Francisco Recreation Department, maybe they still have this, I'm not sure. But back then they had a dark room. Big dark room.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
It's the Harvey Milk Photo Center.
Is it still there?
Me and Jim both work for it.
We work there.
You guys work there?
Oh. We're instructors, yeah.
Oh.
And Jim's an event photographer through there.
Well, hey, I didn't even know that. Okay. I should bring my card. I should show you a picture of the card I have. It was $1 a day. And, you would punch. It was like one of these punch out things.
Yes.
So I'd pay $1 and I'd go into the darkroom for a day and bring my own paper and I'd just print, right? And then I'd go out and just travel around, get a 25-cent ticket on, the Muni, and ride around the cable cars or whatever and take photographs around the city and then go back in the darkroom and print them. So that's what I did when I was staying in her apartment.
Nice. Oh, wow.
Casper, we must see this ticket. I mean,
I will get it.
This dark room, and you have to come and back because the dark room is still there.
It's
still waiting for you.
I would love to do that. How much is it charge nowadays? I bet it's more than $1.
I believe for a 6-month limited, it's like $160 something, or okay. It's actually not I wouldn't say it's that much different.
That's not bad, actually.
No.
Yeah. So, Mark, you have a formal invitation to come and visit the dark room.
I really want to do that.
Yeah.
I have a Hasselblad that I shoot with. I have a Rolleiflex, and I have a Leica M2. And the Hasselblad's my current. I love that camera. Just a gorgeous camera.
The images that come from that is, well, magical is the only really word I can put to it. It just looks too real when I see.
I know. That's just, talk about high resolution, right?
So no, that's a heck of a connection there, because HMPC is what I generally refer to them as. I think they just celebrated their 77th or 76th year in operation. Now, obviously, they changed locations somewhere there along the line, so I'm not sure if they were in the same place when you went. Du Bois Park is where they're at now.
I'll get the ticket, and it has the address.
Park, yeah.
I'll
take a picture of it and give it to you guys.
Yes, I bet anything they would love to see that. There'll be at least a couple of people that'll look back and remember those.
So, just to finish that story.
Good. Yeah.
So after doing that, then I took off to Yosemite by myself and backpacked through the high Sierras again for 8 days by myself.
This is when you're still 15? I'm 15 around
I'm 15 at this point.
Oh, my God.
So that was that summer. San Francisco, doing that stuff, then going up to the mountains. And for some reason, I was talking to my sister about this. How come our parents let me just on the loose? Well, I don't know, but I'm glad they did.
That's wild.
Yeah.
That's perfect enabling.
It really was. It worked for me.
Yeah, that is.
They took a risk and it somehow paid off.
Hey, now, Mark, I want to explore something, a topic that is near and dear to my heart.
Sure.
And that is, you've spoken about this. It is drawing inspiration from other media.
Yeah.
Drawing photographic inspiration. From art, from paintings and everything. Can you discuss that? How do you see that?
Yeah, that's really important, Jim, because I explored that in my first book, Advancing Your Photography. So one of the questions I would always ask, I've done, I don't know, I lost track, over 1,000 hours of interviews with all sorts of different photographers, from Chris Burkhardt, who's huge on Instagram, Chase Jarvis, who, now is the CEO of Creative Live, Joe McNally, lots of different people. And I always ask, how do you get inspired, and how do you dig into the well? How do you get into that well of creativity? And many of these photographers, Bob Holmes, for example, who's a fantastic travel photographer, just superb. Yeah. He's in Marin. And Bob said it's really simple. You've got to go to look at art, and look at art on the wall, not digitally, but see the painting, see the sculpture even, and get your inspiration, because, it's really important to look at photography in terms of the big picture. It's part of a whole stream of how humans have told stories to each other. Going back to the cave paintings, which is the first illustration of my book, pretty much, is the cave painting from 6,000 years ago, maybe longer. They really don't know for sure how old it is. But if you think about it, if you look at other art forms, you're going to learn a lot.
Yeah.
And you have to look at it not just in terms of, whoa, I like that painting by Monet, or I don't like this one, whatever. You have to look at it really carefully and see how that artist used lighting. Like Rembrandt or Vermeer, you can learn an awful lot from these guys, because Vermeer used usually just one light source from a north-facing window. We can get really complicated about lighting, or we can just use one light source, right? And I'm always in the direction of use as least amount of stuff as you have to. Keep it simple, keep it real, But that's been the best advice I can give any photographer or artist, is go look at art on the wall and really study it. and find in it what resonates for you. What is it? What did that artist do? How did they use the dynamics of the color and how the subject they conveyed that? That's really important in terms of learning composition and lighting.
Yeah, I can definitely agree to that, because I started with fine art before, the camera. My background's in oil paints and illustration with charcoals and so forth. And having that, the day I picked up a camera, I was like, oh, this is the same thing, except I'm just looking at a world and capturing that space and doing, in the same vein as putting a brush to a canvas.
Well, I believe you're way ahead of a lot of photographers that I'm really kind of into preaching this, which is look at where photography fits into fine art, because it's just a continuation. Those masters really knew composition. Let's face it. Da Vinci knew composition. So if we want to learn composition, let's go back to these guys, which I really stress in my new book a lot. And I have lots of examples of not just photographs, but of paintings. Yeah. And, going back to these early masters who really understood how to use those tools.
Now, Casper, do you think this might be a good time to talk about the new book? Or
that's a perfect time to move into that. But before we talk about the book, let's get some foundation here with the actual YouTube video series, and so kind of tell us a little bit about advancing your photography and how that came to be.
Well, I was teaching a lot of workshops, and I was quoting different photographers like Ansel Adams, for instance, and I thought, wouldn't it be nice, instead of me getting up here and quoting him, if I had a video of him saying what he meant by some of these topics, like visualization. What does that mean, Ansel? Unfortunately, I couldn't go and ask him that question, but I decided that I really wanted to create a video series where we learn directly from different photographers. Because one way I've always found very successful to learn anything is go talk to the people who have already mastered it and ask them a lot of questions, just like you guys are. That's a smart way to learn. Yeah. Because you're going to pick up real information. This isn't from a book or filtered through somebody else's process. It's right from the source. And I decided I wanted to do this. I was fortunate. I had a sponsor right off the bat with SanDisk.
Oh, that's always handy.
I'm telling you, Casper, this was a beautiful thing because they sponsored me to basically put up a weekly video.
Wow.
And then they sent me around the country to do workshops. I went to B&H and Calumet. Unfortunately, some of these places aren't around. Yep. Calumet in San Francisco, and I did Sammy's in LA, and it was really fantastic. So, but the video series, even with the workshops, I used the video clips as part of the workshop. So that was my basic intention, is I want to go pick the brains of really talented photographers and ask them how they did it and get them to explain it for me and for the audience. And that's really how that started. The whole idea, that the reason why I chose the name Advancing Your Photography is it's not advanced photography. It's advancing, which is a continuous process. I don't care what level of photography you are. If you are not advancing, and this is true with anything in life, but certainly in art, you cannot plateau, because the minute you plateau, you lose interest.
Yes.
I think.
Yeah.
And as long as you continue to advance, and this is how I figured the best way I knew to help people advance their photography is listen to some of these guys, and gals, some fantastic photographers. Deanne Fitzmaurice, are you guys familiar with her work? She's shot for, National Geographic, Sports Illustrated, incredible documentary photographer. And she's right in San Francisco. she and her husband started Think Tank Photo. That's her company. So just one example, and I found it was interesting. It didn't matter if I was interviewing a sports photographer, portrait photographer, children's photographer. You're going to learn something that's going to help you with any genre that you're shooting.
Oh yeah,
I guarantee it.
You know, I was particularly interested in your series with Bob Holmes in lighting.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God! I mean, it was I just looked at it, and as much as much of a photographer as I think I am, a good photographer, I learned something from that. From just look at that one clip. The Vermeer lighting that he was talking about. From the single source that comes from a light that comes from within the image. Within the frame instead of outside the frame. It's fascinating.
That's right.
It's fascinating.
He has such a great way. He's a fantastic photographer. The combination that I looked for was they had to be a skilled photographer, but they also had to be able to articulate how they did it. Because it doesn't do much good to just have a great photographer who can't really talk about it. Yeah. And unfortunately, I tried to screen those guys away because... it's just like you guys. If you're getting one sentence answers, it makes for a kind of a dull show,
we've had those.
Right? That's right.
Sometimes we have to work a little harder.
You have to sort of pry the answer. Yeah, you have to work really hard. I had one. I won't mention his name. Fantastic photographer, but literally he would give me, between 1 and 5 word answers, and it was really tough until about halfway through the interview. He started to loosen up enough that I got some more meat on it. But Bob has a great way of articulating how he sees things and what his recommendation is. And he's just all about take advantage of available light primarily. But he gives some really good tricks, like if you need additional light, use a newspaper to bounce. I saw that. He's talking about traveling all over the place, and he's not carrying a lot of stuff with him. Get a newspaper, and somebody else mentioned just wear a white T-shirt to bounce. These simple things that you can do that can make such a difference. Just a little more light in the person's face or in their eye, from that newspaper, from your shirt.
I thought that newspaper idea was ingenious.
Isn't that great?
Yeah, it is.
There's always newspaper.
Well, it's proving yet again how resourceful artists can be.
Totally, and should be.
Yes, yeah. Now, I mean, one of those things you were talking about the education and the inspiration that's coming from advancing your photograph. Going into these interviews and deriving all the information, in the end, you compiled all of this into an actual written version of the show. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, the whole book is built around what I call the cycle of photography. I was trying to figure out, everything has a beginning, a middle, and an end, right? So the cycle of photography is something I really figured out after interviewing so many different photographers. The first thing you do is you visualize the photograph. What do you want to photograph? What story do you want to tell? And strengthening that ability also comes from what we were talking about, which is look at other art. Look at people's art on the wall.
Yes.
Because you'll get ideas. Then you've got to know your camera backwards and forwards. Bob Holmes makes this point, like, don't let the camera get in the way of your photograph.
Oh, that's so important. Too many people chase gas.
Man.
Always want a new camera and the new hot and shiny thing. But all you're doing is setting up yourself for disaster. Because if you don't know how to use the camera, then you're not going to get the shot.
Completely. And it's just diddling is not photographing, right? Tinkering with little thises and that's is just a sidestep that you really shouldn't have to get into if you know your equipment.
Yeah. I see so many students in photo walks and in workshops that they spend so much time looking down and, twiddling with their settings. And I'm like, just put it on program. Let's move forward.
Exactly. Totally. So that's the next step is know your camera like a good friend is what I say.
There you go.
Make it your best friend. Then you get into the next phase, which is called capture. And capture includes your use of lighting, and it includes your use of composition.
Mm-hmm.
And that basically blends the first two steps. So once you visualize it and you know your equipment, then you go ahead and capture the image as you visualized it. And then, of course, you process the image. And that continues your visualization, because how did you see this? You know, if you're shooting digitally, did you see it as a black and white?
Mm-hmm.
Did you see it in a certain way that you want to, how you want to process it? And then the final stage as you come around is sharing your work. And by sharing, I don't just mean on social media. I mean, that's one way to share your work, but there's so many what I consider better ways. Like Casper, you got photographs on your wall there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the most basic point about photography is print it, put it in frames, put it on the wall so other people can see it.
Yes, it's so very important to print your work. You will see it in a whole different light.
Oh, yeah.
Take it out. Let's get out of this digital compulsion, you know, that everything's got to be digital.
Everything's disposable
and put
in that
it
way.
Out there. Yeah, so that's really the full scope of what the book is about. And I take each one of those stages and break it down into its component parts so that it really makes sense. And what's cool about it is as you improve any one of those stages of photography, you improve all the other ones. So for instance, when you know how to edit and process your photographs better, it'll make you better able to visualize the photograph.
So much.
Yeah.
Right? Everything works together. You know, it's same thing in video production. I consider it so important to be a good editor, to know how to shoot a frame, you know, because if you know what you can do in post-production, you know really what you have to do to shoot it. And all these things fit together. When you share your work, you're going to get feedback from people. And that's going to help you understand what story you're telling.
Yes.
So that's what the first book is about, advancing your photography. My new book, I went on to basically take apart composition. There's two things that you have to know no matter, like even if you shoot on P or you shoot with an iPhone, there's really two things you have to know. One is lighting, and lighting can be pretty simple, as we already discussed. So the other subject is composition. Doesn't matter what camera you're using, you're always going to need to know how to compose a photograph. Yeah. And looking into this, I really discovered there were these two schools of thought here. One is, you know, composition is something you have to sort of figure out intuitively, and you know it when you see it. The other is there's all these rules that you have to follow.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and if you follow these rules, you're going to somehow compose a good photograph. Well, you know, like most things in life, the answer lies in the middle. You know, you don't say to a person learning how to cook, hey, it's all intuitive, just start throwing things in a pan and it'll come out.
It'll work itself out in the pan.
It's all going to work itself. You don't learn how to play the guitar that way.
No.
You don't just put or the piano, you know, you follow a lesson plan that breaks it down and teaches you how to do it.
I love how you apply the analogy of recipes or cooking, because that is you don't think about it being such a correlation at first, but it truly is, because in your book you had made mention of using the same ingredients to make completely different dishes.
You read that? That's
good.
You're right.
I read it.
Like if you take Bisquick, right? You know, on the Bisquick box, you can make pancakes, you can make muffins, you can make bread, you know, you can make all the strawberry shortcake, and all pretty much from the same basic ingredients.
It's like Taco Bell. It's all the same thing, just you get different ways of eating it.
There you go.
And then price it differently too.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, it's about that time to give a shout out to our sponsor, Glass Key Photo. Glass Key is a Bay Area standard for all things analog. Now, whether you're looking for camera repairs, a new film camera, lenses, film, or even some kick-ass scenes created by local photographers of many genres, this is the place to find it. Plus, they're pretty damn good folks to know and chat with, too. Located at 1230 Sutter Street in downtown San Francisco, Glass Key is open 7 days a week from 12 to 6 and managed by two of the most knowledgeable film buffs we know. And with all the sad stories of camera shop closers throughout the last few years, it's a testament to what Gordon and Matt have created over there. And the next time you're in town, you should definitely give them a visit to see if, they have anything you need, and to give them a big hello from all of us here at StreetPX.
So along those lines, Casper, what the book is basically 83 compositional recipes or tools, whichever way you want to look at it. And the best way I have of describing it is, Joe McNally talks about the language of light. You really have to understand the language of light. And I use that analogy in this book too. There's a vocabulary to composition. And if you only have 4 or 5 words in your vocabulary, you're going to have a hard time expressing yourself. Many photographers probably have that many, they have a handful of ways that they basically compose a photograph. And, that's one of the biggest mistakes you can make, or putting it in a positive way. One of the best ways to free yourself is to look at things from different angles and perspectives. Crouch down low. If you shoot everything from eye level, well, maybe it's not going to be that interesting. But if you get up high, shoot from a high angle on a ladder or a set of stairs or climbing a tree or a hill or whatever, it's going to give you a different perspective. Same thing shooting low. If you shoot low in action shots like sports, you're going to really emphasize the action, and you're going to make that subject really stand out. And you do just the reverse. If you shoot high looking down at somebody, they're going to look a lot smaller. So it's all about how you want to portray it.
Yeah, you know what? I was going to say, what jumped out at me, Mark? The term Steelyard composition.
Yeah. What does that mean?
I love that. What does that mean? I saw the explanation, but I would love for you to hear you talk about it.
Steelyard sounds like we're going to go to a steelyard where there's a lot of metal, heavy metal, and we're going to pound it and somehow get a photograph. It actually doesn't have anything to do with that. A steelyard is basically a scale. That's what it means. It's another term for a scale. Okay. And in a steelyard composition, Monet used this a lot in his paintings. So you have a balance between an object on one side, which is larger, balanced with an object on the other side, which is smaller. And what that does is it creates a sense of balance in your composition. And many of these compositional tools are actually about that. How do you create a sense of balance and order? And, I think the aesthetic appeal of anything is really when there's order brought into it, when there's some sense of proportions are correct and things are in balance or not. That has a lot to do with what's pleasing in terms of composition. Another example is symmetry. Symmetry, Bob Holmes talks about this a lot in his interviews that I did. He uses symmetry a lot. And symmetry, again, also gives you this sense of balance. But another cool thing that you can do with symmetry is, or this really applies more to patterns, which is very similar to symmetry. If you take a picture of something with a strong pattern in it, it's intriguing. You're kind of drawn to it. But what's even cooler is break the pattern. So your eyes kind of going along and you go, oh, wow, this is a cool pattern here. You can see on the cover of my book as an example of that. This is a photograph, and I imagine you'll probably have it in your notes because it's the cover of the book. This is a photograph I took of my wife in Paris at the d'Orsay Museum, and looking out through the clock. Now she's standing off center. So the pattern, the whole thing is a geometric pattern with this clock, and then she's off center. And what that does is there's something cool about your eye loves that pattern, but then when you see something breaking the pattern, you're drawn to it. It's the same thing in music. You know, when you break that beat a little bit, bam, you know, it's rhythm that gets interrupted, but it's interrupted in a way that actually accentuates. It doesn't distract.
One of the statements I always tend to use with in my workshop is the use of language. And when it comes to rules, you don't really know a language until you can be sarcastic in it,
and you can swear
and be humorous. I mean, those little
you've got those nuances.
Yeah, exactly. And the same applies when it comes to photography. Understand your foundations and then break them.
Yes. Well, you know, Casper, might as well throw that out. So I mentioned at the beginning these two schools of thought. The truth is there are no rules, right? Okay,
guidelines.
There are guidelines. Mm-hmm. A rule is like gravity. You know, if you have your camera up 5 feet off the ground and you take your hands off of it, it's going to fall and probably break. Right.
Right.
That's a rule. Okay. You know, unless you've learned how to levitate your camera, I haven't gotten that figured out yet. But if you, let's say you do not choose to use the rule of thirds, I'm making quotation marks, and you put your subject right in the middle, does your camera break? Do the photography police issue you a ticket, a citation? You know, you broke the rule of thirds here, dude. You're going to have to pay. No, because there are no rules, but there are guidelines and there's tools, and you should know how those tools work. And you're right, you can bend them. You have to know them first.
Now, something that needs to be said about your book is the structure, and the manner in which you put this together is very, very interesting. Because from what I was able to derive from it is it's not necessarily a book that you have to read from beginning to end. Right. It's advantageous to do so because of the flow and the manner in which you make it. But you can easily go through this and pick out inspiring. How do you put these? The 83 compositions or the 83 guidelines, tools. There it is. Yeah. And you can literally just crack the book open and see something that's going to work for you in the street, or at least put it in the back of your mind to kind of subconsciously look for it.
Exactly. Think of it again of broadening your ability to communicate in terms of vocabulary.
Right.
And the more your vocabulary is increased, you know, just like with writing, if you know more words, you're going to be able to use them more fluently, right?
Right.
Whether you're learning a new language or you're learning our language, which sometimes seems like a new language to me.
Every day.
Every day, you know. But yeah, if you have, you can, like as you said, you could read it cover to cover and go through it, or you could just carry it with you and you're looking for inspiration.
I was going to ask, is it pocketable?
Yes, it's pocketable. It's basically the size that you can put in a camera bag. And we purposely made it that. So you're going on a trip to Paris or Rome or somewhere, right? And you're thinking, I don't want to just come back with all the cliche photographs because I might as well just buy postcards if I'm going to do that. So let me flip through the book on the plane and see if I can get some ideas. And each one of these compositional tools does stand alone. So you can basically get that one in your mind. You go, wow, there's these 5 that I really want to try out. Now, I'm hoping over the summer, so the book is coming out next week, May, in fact, a week from tomorrow. I'm hoping that someone's will take the challenge to actually take examples of every one of these 83 compositional tools and hashtag them on Instagram.
Yes.
Because I think that's a great way to.
Yeah, I saw the allusion to that. Speak out about the hashtag.
Okay, the hashtag I'm using is hashtag AYP Club. AYP Club. We've already got that going pretty strong from my first book, and I didn't want to add another hashtag. So we're just going to use the same one. And what if you took this challenge over the summer, there's 83 of these, you did one a day, that would pretty much take you through the summer. And I guarantee you're going to be a much better photographer at the end of that. It's just a simple challenge that is going to make you a better photographer. You can't help but become a better photographer because you're going to have learned all these different ways to express yourself. So that's the point of the book. And I was intrigued by doing this because I had to find examples of every one of these. And many times I drew from not just my own work, but I drew from the masters of painting. So you'll see Da Vinci's in there. You'll see Monet, Vermeer, of course, and other photographers as well that Bob Holmes, use their examples. Because I also wanted to emphasize this whole point that we were talking about earlier is look at the roots of photography. It just didn't spring out of Instagram, a few years ago.
It is not a chicken and egg question.
I know. I hate to shock you.
You just surprised a lot of people out there.
Guess what?
Said, what?
It wasn't just developed in
Instagram?
2010 and launched. It's been around. And the whole subject of what pleases your eye has really been figured out by the masters. Let's face it. They knew how to do that. So if you learn from them, you're going to broaden your vocabulary again.
Yeah. Jim?
I just have a question. Can you talk about zither.com?
Oh, Zither. Wow, we're going to go on.
Yeah, I want to find out more about that.
Zither is an app that I developed a few years ago, and it solves the problem of how do you keep track of all your stuff? So as photographers, we have a lot of gear.
Yeah.
And what Zither will do is it will record that in your app, what it is, the exact gear. In fact, you can use the barcode scanner. So let's say you get a new camera. You open up the box, or you take the box, you scan the barcode on the side. Zither will generally find it. It will put a picture there, and then you can save it. Now, the cool thing is it will save your manual as well. So, you should have references. You should use your manual, but where do you put those things? They go on some shelf somewhere and gather dust, or if you put them in your app, you can refer to them anytime.
That's handy.
Like take, for example, this H5 I've got, this Zoom recorder. There's a couple little settings that it took me a while to figure out, but I can actually put that in the notes in Zither and remember how to find those settings in the future. The other cool thing is it will keep track of your warranty. And a warranty, if something happens, you should take advantage of it and get it fixed.
Right.
But what if you don't know when the warranty is expiring? So Zither will actually track that for you.
Such a great idea.
Yeah, it is. It's simple, but it works very effective.
It's real solid.
Yeah, it is.
It's on iTunes. You can just download it for free.
Is it iOS only, or is there Android for it?
Yeah, it's just iOS. I have not developed an Android version. We might, but at this point, we were just concentrating on iOS.
All right. So to my fellow Android users out there, give it time, or maybe just email Mark and then ask him.
We'll just keep
see how many.
Pounding me with emails, and maybe I'll do it.
Well, I don't mean to. I want to just kind of pull us back real quick. You had made mention that your second book, your newest book here, is going to be going up on available on May what?
May 15th. So that's a week from tomorrow on Amazon. It will drop.
May 15th. Fantastic.
And the good thing is, I don't know when this is going to air.
We'll probably be just past that. So just we tend to use the recording time machine.
Okay.
So if you to all my listeners out there, it's very likely that by the time you hear this, that's available on Amazon. And I'm gonna throw out a guess and say it's probably number one, just like the last one too.
Yeah.
And if not, let's make it.
Let's make it number one. I love it when people leave reviews.
Yes,
that really helps.
And the good thing for Casper and I, we're close enough that we can come down to Carmel and get it signed, right?
You can. I'm going to anytime.
All right. There you go, man.
We'll have to plan that trip. That would be fun.
Yeah, I would love to. I would love that, man.
Yeah, absolutely. So the good thing is too, the price that as the book sells, this is an interesting thing with Amazon, the price goes lower. And the good thing is that both the publisher and I, we don't get less. It doesn't cut into our percentage, which is nice.
Really?
So as people order the book, the price will drop. And that's a nice little factoid there.
And we'll have the link to where to purchase this on Amazon in the show notes. So if you happen to be driving and listening to this, don't worry about writing anything. No wrecks. Just wait until you get home and then head over to streetpx.com and click on this episode.
You know, I have to say I'm really proud of this book. It took a lot of work, and I really feel that it was a hole. There wasn't another book that just talked about vision and photography.
Especially in this manner, it's definitely filling a gap.
Exactly. So I feel that, you know, this is something that's a must read that you should have with you. You should put it in your camera bag, carry it around.
And it's a very fascinating series, and I definitely recommend our listeners out there to take a look into this. Definitely, as far as this moment, it is. Then you're hearing this, not necessarily when we're recording. The book is available through Amazon, and you can also, I'm sure you have a link, an easy link that you can give people.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess we'll have that in the show notes.
Probably. We will. Yes. You
know, one thing I should say that's handy, if you know how to spell my name. MarcSilber. You can find me really easily because that's my Instagram. That's if you type that into Amazon, my books will come up. If you type it into YouTube, my videos will come up.
And the same goes for like classes that you've done for the digital photography school in the past. And I think you're also a contributor for Photo Focus. Is that correct?
I am. Yes.
Yeah. As of recording, you actually just posted something yesterday, right?
I believe so. I don't know exactly when those go live, but probably so because I just put up some new ones.
I think it was about lighting. Was a really great, fascinating series on that. Yeah.
Yeah. That's one of my creatives. I have a great team that is working with me now in addition to the stuff that I develop on YouTube. I have a pro in New York. And I have two in LA, so they're creating content with me.
Oh, fantastic! And that's actually that's a very fine point there too. Is the book is great, but also don't forget you have access to a lot of content that Marc has put out there already on his YouTube channel, and I believe is at .tv.
It's Silber Studios.
Silber Studios, that's right.
.tv.
Yes.
And there's another cool feature, Casper, I should mention, is that you know, in the first book, and I'll do this for the second one too, I mention a lot of different resources and people and that sort of thing. So I have a resource page on my website that follows the chapters. So if you want to watch I quote Bob Holmes, for example, or Chase Jarvis, and you want to watch the entire video, it's there. And the different things I mentioned, you can go right along with that resource page and find these things digitally while you're reading the book, which is pretty handy.
That's great.
Nice.
Well, cool. I know we're kind of running short on time, especially as our people may probably not have noticed because of the magic of editing. We had a couple of hiccups, but I think this is a really good time to throw it to Jim and ask the question that we always ask our guests at the end.
Nice little fun question, Marc.
Okay.
But if you could choose to photograph at any place in the world at any time period since the inception of the camera, where would that be and when would that be?
Boy, I thought of two different things. Maybe I'll give them to you both. So one, I was thinking of Everest. You know, I am a mountaineer. And it would have been fantastic to photograph Hillary.
Yeah.
He actually wasn't the first person to hit the summit. It was his Sherpa, but they were both there together. So, but that would have been amazing to photograph that whole journey. And then I think of my inspiration from Henri Cartier-Bresson and photographing in Paris during that time period, the 40s, 30s, 40s, and 50s would have been terrific. So those are my two answers.
That's amazing.
You know what? That was one of my answers. Europe in the 50s.
Yeah.
For some reason, that just intrigued
something about that.
the post-war, the recovery.
recovery.
We're going to have to
and
go back through all of our episodes because we got about 60. This will make about 66 answers so far. And I need to do a spreadsheet on the correlation of what people, where they say and what time. And I have a feeling post-World War II there that you guys are talking about is probably going to be a very, very common one.
Absolutely. Well, you know, like just cars, for instance, you know, modern cars to me are so boring and they're disposable.
Like a Dodge Neon, you know, everything looks the
Who
same
cares?
and they last about 3-4 years.
They're disposable, but those cars back then, you know, they were works of art.
Yeah, that's right. They were rolling art forms.
They were rolling art forms.
The first car I ever drove was a 68 Cuda. Hemi Cuda.
Wow.
And my dad, I was 8 years old. He put me in the driver's seat. And then fast forward a few years later, and my first wreck was in a 72 Newport, which was like a land barge. So when I hit the tree, Dad was more worried about the tree.
I bet.
But if you do that today with a Neon, the car just gets split in half.
Yeah, they throw them away. But back, you know, we had some pretty amazing art in all sorts of different forms.
Yep.
Well, good.
Well, cool. Well, Mark, let's go ahead and do this. Go ahead and throw out any links that you want where our listeners can find out more about your work and your books and your videos as well.
Yeah, so you can find me on my website. Again, that's Silber, and make sure you spell it with a B. It's B like Bravo, ER, silberstudios.com or .tv. Both go to the same place. And you can find me on Instagram, Marc Silber. You can find me on Amazon by typing in Marc Silber. And YouTube, type in Marc Silber.
Good deal. And Jim, where can we find out more about you?
Okay, as always, JimWatkinsPhoto.com, and you can see all my links to all of my social media platforms right there.
Fantastic. And to find out more about me, go and take a look at recasper.com. You'll find all of my Instagram, social feeds, any of that stuff. But more importantly, go take a look at StreetPX.com. That's where we're going to find all of our previous episodes right there in the archives. And we have hundreds of hours of content out there for you to listen to, inspiring artists just like Mark here today. And if you like what we have cooking over here, definitely go and take a look at patreon.com/StreetPX. And from there, any contributions that you offer us, whether it's $1, $5 or whatnot, it all goes back into helping keep this show flowing and getting better every single episode. And take a look at iTunes, look us up, do a search for StreetPX and throw us a review. We love reviews. Give us some gold stars. That helps us get into more ears out there in the world. So above all, thank you all for listening in. And Mark, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it.
My pleasure, guys.
So definitely thank you all again, and we'll talk at you in the fall. Have a great summer.
Bye.
Cheers.